Thanks everyone for coming along, and really appreciate you having me here. And so really, in terms of photography, what I wanted to start with was just talking about premium content, or premium stills, as we call it, Getty Images. And what is that? Well, I guess that's for us, it's the best of what we produce. And so what I've done is put together a kind of breakdown of what goes into premium content, with an idea that this is the stuff that, I mean, obviously Getty Images you'll know for producing stock imagery of varying degrees of quality. And we are looking at really the top end here. And that's the end that I'd imagine that I certainly aspired to, and I'd imagine that you aspire to in terms of, you know, what you want to achieve with photography. And so in terms of that, it's just a breakdown of what it actually is, and why should we shoot it? Well, I think in terms of, this is the only two pie charts that are in this presentation, so please excuse them being there. But why should we look at premium photography? Well, in terms of what we added last year at Getty Images, we only had about 12% of premium, what we'd call premium content, so the best of what we produce. But in terms of the money that it made, the revenue that it created, it actually represented around over 35% of the money that we got back. So you can see it punches above its weight in terms of how it does, and it does better for the photographers. So what I'm just going to talk about is what we mean by that, and what goes into that kind of content that does better and outperforms the rest. So I'm going to use an acronym, apologize for that, but it's a clear way of just kind of going through what goes into that kind of work. And so the first element really that is involved in that is production and research. So it's looking at the essentials of what goes into an image. So the casting, i.e., I mean, you all know this, but the people in the shot, the styling, i.e., the way that they're dressed, the way that the wardrobe is put together, the location, so where it's shot, and the treatment, i.e. how you shoot it. And those are all key in terms of the production and the research that goes into imagery. We have people who make a very good living from just shooting industry interiors, so all they do is phone factories and manufacturers and go in and shoot the industry, because it's so hard to get at. There's a massive value in the shots that they get. And so that's quite an interesting example of it. I mean, this is a shot that I did with a photographer friend of mine called Jasper White. The idea was it was a nuclear waste, and we got this great set designer who actually put the whole thing together and built this huge bomb, as it were, out of the bin. And I guess it was, I mean, this is for me, very dear to me, because obviously it's more conceptual, so it's talking about issues, and I think that's something that definitely works in terms of what sells and what goes on to make revenue with Getty Images. It's imagery that has concepts, whether it's togetherness, love, friendship, connection. Those are all things that obviously our clients are looking for when they search for imagery. And so this image then, when you see them used, it's quite a nice thing in terms of seeing, you know, how they're actually, when a buyer has actually chosen that shot, it definitely is something that, you know, really is very pleasing. And one of the reasons that the shot has value is because of all the work that went into the production and the research behind it in terms of putting it together. It wasn't massively expensive, because obviously it's just rubbish and a bin, but it's the time that's gone into taking that idea and actually making that idea a reality in terms of the image itself. And that's the value in that particular shot. It's the idea executed well. And so that's where I think, you know, it adds value to what's been created there. So other examples of this is a photographer of ours called Henrik, and he works a lot with dancers. And this is a shoot one of our art directors did with him. He's based in Copenhagen. And so it was about, obviously it's about balance, or it's got a lot of conceptual value in terms of cooperation and working together. And so, but obviously the value in that is around the production value and the research that's gone into it. So he knows he's gone to the trouble of sourcing and casting these dancers, and he's also gone to the trouble of styling them in the right way, finding a location that suits what he's trying to do, and it all reinforces his overall idea, and he's never lost sight of the idea that he's worked on with the art director. And that's really important in terms of holding on to that and working towards it, making something different. This is where the value is in the production itself. This is a guy called Mitch Jenkins who does a lot of stills for TV and movie. He did like the Prison Break stills that you might remember, very powerful. And he shot this with keener flows. So he created basically a frame of light. So it wasn't flash lit, it was shot with the available light, almost like a model light. And that was a high production value way of working. And so most of the cost there is in the lighting. And so the models had to stay very still in terms of getting that shot on a Hasselblad. And so you have to stay very still to get that depth of field, that short depth of field where only the eyes are in focus. And so this is one where the production and research value is really in how it's shot and the kit that's gone into producing this. The next step in this is about getting an emotional message through to clients, or something that means something to you as a photographer. It's where there's believability in the shot. I think this is a bestseller of ours, and I think it's because it's talking about concentration and learning, and it looks like the subject, the model, is actually really doing both those things, concentrating and learning. And I think that's where our clients increasingly want realism. They want believability. They won't put up with something that looks fake, but they will invest in imagery that has been put together, like the stuff we just looked through. But emotional message, I mean, that's something we get a lot from our Flickr content. So we have a partnership with Flickr, and what we look at is we look through Flickr photographers, and we invite them to become contributors. And so this is where this is obviously feels true because it is real. And you can kind of tell that there's various tells about, you know, what creates real-looking photography or authentic-looking photography. But this was, and it's nice to have the story behind it. I mean, this was where she was very ill, and she wasn't sure if she would meet her great-grandson, and she did. And the story's in the image, but it comes across in the emotion behind the image, and it's that authenticity that really helps to mean something to us and to people who might want to use that shot. This is a series by a photographer called Nick Ballon, who we're going to look at some more of his work a little bit later on. But again, what he did was went to an artist's studio and was looking at them involved in their actual work. So he's in the location that they're in. So all these shots involve various elements of what we're going through. But this was where there's value in the location because it feels very real. He's gone to the trouble of asking them to pose for him. And it's also very conceptual, so it has that kind of, it's about preparation, it's about work, it's about perseverance, it's about love of what you do. And so it has a lot of conceptual value. And so that's something that our clients look for. That's how they're searching for content. But what we want to do is make sure that the content we provide them feels real and has an emotional resonance to them and doesn't feel too set up. So you believe that he's in his studio doing what he does because he is. That's where he is. And so that's why you know, this shot works and has done well. This is a photographer called Robert van der Hilst. And again, he's very much reportage, and what he's doing is photographing real people in a very painterly way. So he uses available light, and he generally will get a side light onto his subjects. And he's done subjects. This is a rich family in France, but he's also done lots of subjects. He's done lots of projects in China, for example, and it's all lit the same way. So he has this way of working that is what he does. And again, it's got an emotional realism about it, an emotional message. So this is the nice bit, the idea, and that's what really differentiates the premium content. And The idea might be something as conceptual as trying to convey community. What does community mean? Well, let's look at that and try and look at something that says that in a very different way. This was a shot that one of our art directors in the London office came up with, and it was obviously a house share shoot, and it's designed to kind of play with the idea of community, the idea of collaboration in an interesting way. And so there was, went on to be to look at people in the lounge, people in the kitchen, etc. But it's about sharing and collaboration, and so the idea there is very strong. This is a shot by Bria Blake, and it's just to show you that the idea can be something that's very simple and doesn't cost a lot in terms of execution. So again, this is about it's more of an installation in a way that's then photographed afterwards. So it's in a way it's more art that's then photographed. But again, it's very conceptual, and it's talking about variety. It's talking about the act of creation and the art of creativity. And that's something that, again, a lot of our clients are looking for. They're looking for shots that talk broadly about different themes and different concepts. And that's where this comes in very handy. This is Tara Moore, and she works only within about 2 square miles of London. And she did this whole project around falling. And I love it. It cost a lot to do. She's obviously just gone and shot the street scenes at night. She then photographed models falling onto a mattress and then comped the two together, but obviously with the same lighting setup. But she is a real inspiration because she is someone who just finds an idea, fixates on it, and then sees that through. And that's it's an amazing series, and it's gone on to make some very big sales because obviously it's a conceptual moment in terms of what that talks about luck, about chance, there's so much about freedom within that, and obviously the obvious as well, which is falling down on your luck or what have you. So it's an amazing shot, an amazing series, and again, it hasn't taken a lot to put together. And this is Freundtal Verhagen. So again, the idea might be to mix media and play around with photography in the way that's done here. And so that's the idea can be something again that doesn't cost a lot to bring to reality, and can be just playing around with different media. So the fourth area is usability matters, and that's where clients want imagery that they can use quickly, that appeals to them, and that gives them composition and copy space so that they can actually add it into their work. And so that's another element to be aware of. So all of these elements at their best will go into why a client chooses a shot. And so this is a shot from Biwa Studio. It's obviously a very fast flash, and it's something that's on white. So I could just drop that in, and it looks probably a little bit more professional than the rest of the shots I've used because it's on white and it's very usable. And it's got that, obviously, a very wide conceptual application. This is a shot by Kelvin Murray, which again has the same massive amounts of space. So it's kind of crying out to be used, so that space is crying out to be used by designers. And that's another area where work will do well because it's got that kind of composition, that space to it. Again, thinking around composition and around, obviously this is quite a detailed shot, but Chris Turner, who's based in Camden, he produced this around obviously the idea of well-being and balance in health and food. And it's quite a difficult shot to get, but a very good one and a nice idea. And then this is Tim Flack. And again, going back to the idea of composition, copy space, and also trying to show a different take on a well-known theme, the white dove, and showing it in a different way and lighting it in a different way. He's got a very subtle use of lighting and really well composed. So just in terms of what we're looking for, just to recap that, what we see as the top end of our work, it would be production and research has gone into it. It would have an emotional message. It would pull what Bart calls the punctum, to pull in the viewer and engage with the viewer. It would have a strong idea or concept, and it would also be usable in terms of, actually applicable to a client in terms of what they're doing in terms of their projects. And so with that, I just wanted to also talk a little bit about narrative and story, because I think that's important it's important to recognize that a lot of these photographers are working in their own furrow, and that's a very good thing. So they're really concentrating and narrowing down their point of focus into a certain theme or certain area that they really want to make work. And that might be project-based, it might be theme-based, but I just want to show you some examples. So Nick Ballon, whose work we looked at earlier, he's part Bolivian, and he's just been back to Bolivia to photograph the wrestlers. And it's a really lovely series of work that really is sympathetic and really gets under the skin of these guys. And it's a lovely series of work. Looks great. And again, it's kind of very conceptual. It's got a lovely idea behind it. But he's gone to the lengths to make it really work. And he's obviously got in terms of the production and the research, he's obviously found these guys. He knows he wants to shoot them. He knows how he wants to shoot them. And he's gone to the trouble of making that work. And then the idea really is to showcase them in a very sort of sparse way and not without huge amounts of extraneous material. And again, with the usability, he's left a lot of space in there. The composition is pleasing with the guy, even with the guy crying out in pain there. It's still very usable in terms of composition, and the guy falling, again, it's very usable. So it's a nice project. He also did this series where people were getting casts made on, of a mask for their face, and there's various shots of this in progress. And it's kind of a weird idea. Like, why would you shoot the process of that? But it's a lovely series of shots, and it involves this guy just increasingly covered in gloop, and then the final results. And it's a lovely, it's a really well thought out project. And again, he's followed it through, and he's deemed the idea is strong enough that he will execute it. And I think it's about the confidence in the idea. So get the idea and work out how you're going to do it, but don't lose sight of the idea, even if you have challenges along the way. And I think that's something that's true of a lot of the guys doing this kind of work. It's about holding on to the initial idea. So if it's about a waste paper bin that's going to blow up, then it's finding someone who can actually make that happen, make that a reality, and collaborating with people who can make these things happen. But have confidence in your ideas, however weird they might seem, and try and follow them through, I think. This is Jasper again, and this is his series that he did in Frankfurt brothel, which were just the rooms in the brothel. Again, strange idea. One might question his motives of this trip. And so he was really interested in places without people. That's his overarching theme of his work. So he started out doing a series of chairs, of people's favorite chairs. And now this is a kind of extension of that. So again, it's about finding something that really interests you beyond the superficial, that really interests you. Like, what is it that really pulls on you as a photographer? And following that through and coming up with projects that will make... These are not commissioned projects. This is stuff he's done. And what was interesting about Jasper, when I was an art buyer, commissioning photography, he was the guy who I'd ask, what are you up to? And most photographers would say, oh, I'm not very busy. He never did. He was always doing something, even when it wasn't paid for. So he was always making work. He was always making projects for himself. So he never would say, oh, quite quiet at the moment, because he always had, oh, well, I'm working on this, I'm working on this, I'm working on this. And it all fitted this theme. And it's a very interesting body of work, and it's been shown in galleries and books, and it obviously raises a lot of questions as well, which is quite nice. And so I think it's something that, again, bears out that. This is a guy called Mark Tipple, an Australian photographer who we found through Flickr. And he obviously he loves surf, but what he did was he sat under the water, and he got this amazing view of the surfers as they came through, and people trying to keep their balance while the waves were piling over them. And it's just a unique perspective, and I think that's the other thing. So this kind of harks back to the production and the research bit. He's really gone into that. So he hasn't just said, I'm going to take a few pictures of a rolling wave, and everyone's seen those pictures of the rolling wave. He's actually gone under the water, got the kit to go under the water, and produced something that I think these are really ethereal and look quite amazing when you see them large format. They're pretty amazing. And obviously, there's differences in each one, but they all kind of tie together. And it's a really lovely take on something that, is a very common theme, a very common subject matter. It's not all about budget. I mean, Rock Canals, who again came through Flickr, he's just interested in playing around with design and then photographing the results, a bit like the Bria Blake stuff with the pencils. But again, it's a little bit like experimenting and photographing what he's creating. Again, so the idea doesn't have to be something that does need, a lot of set design or someone to help you out with. It can be something as simple as a match, that has two heads on it. I mean, it's quite interesting. And he photographed that, and, I think the results are very interesting. And he does very well as a photographer with us through Flickr. The final one is BJ Fomento. And these guys work in the States, as you might imagine, and they've got a very cinematic take on what they do. So it's one shot, it's a bit Loca de Corsia, but it's very interesting that they get together this whole kind of story in one image, and they go to great lengths. And obviously, we're not all going to be able to go to these kind of great lengths to produce this, but they go to great lengths within each shot to get this kind of cinema. So there's almost a story. You almost want to know the story behind each of the models that they use. And again, it's about production, it's about research, it's about the idea, having the idea there. It's about the emotional message. So they really want to portray something about suburban life, for example, in the left-hand image. They really want to portray something in the idea that they're getting across. And so I hope that through who I've shown you and what we've gone through, that gives you a kind of idea around how important the idea, the story is, and how important it is to kind of keep hold of that through the process. And if there are any questions around it or around the work that we have at Getty Images, I'll be happy to answer them.
This is your time to put your hand up if you've got any questions, and or you can always speak to Tom afterwards because he's going to be staying hopefully for a bit.
So what do you have to do to be premium? If you have pictures and you become a premium guy or get images, what do you have to do?
Well, I think we're looking for, I mean, when you look at someone like Rock, it's just about having the courage of your convictions in terms of, what you're producing. And I think it's more about having a body of work. So it's having work that, has that emotional message to it, is conceptual, has an idea behind it, and that can be picked up on. And I think that's where, we consider it to be premium. I think that's, it's a funny label to put onto photography as premium, but it's really a way of looking at what makes it at the highest level, and what has gone into that content. And it seems to be that mixture of preparation, idea, emotions, all those elements.
Yeah. Well, if you think you have premium content, who would you contact? Like, how would you go about it?
Give me a call. If you think you have, yeah. I mean, we also have a partnership with Flickr. So, we're constantly looking at Flickr content, and obviously there's about 700 million, 7 billion images there to look through, so it's a fair amount. But we also have a partnership with Flickr where we're looking at content that's there and looking for photographers there. So that's another area that you could, if you're on Flickr, chances are, and you make your work available to license with a request for license. How many people are have Flickr accounts? That's good. So there is on the Getty Images homepage, there's a work with us through Flickr. So what you do is you would submit 10 images, and then we can assess those and send you an invite. So if you're interested, then please, by all means, go on there and have a look.
I'm interested to know whereabouts you're based at. Whereabouts are you, your offices?
We're in Camden.
Oh, right, okay, so just around the corner.
Yes.
And how many people do you have in your team? How does it work?
Well, we've got offices in London, obviously. We've got an office throughout Europe, but the creative teams that I look after are London, Tokyo, Seattle, and Dublin. And we have another creative team based in New York. And so we work, obviously, around the clock with those guys, and we work with various photographers in each of our regions. And we're always looking for new talent, and we're always looking to try and produce content that kind of moves beyond what our customers are using right now, and maybe talks about what they might be using, you know, 6 months to a year from now.
So do you often like commission certain projects, or is it more that certain photographers work to then use as
We work with photographers on ideas, yeah. So if a photographer's got a body of work and they want to work with us, then art directors or editors might work with them to give them input. So we'll take some of the information that we have from what clients have purchased or licensed, and we'll try and, you know, but it has to fit the photographer's work. So there's no point giving someone who's a portrait artist, you know, a lifestyle brief. You have to kind of fit what they do and work within their, you know, to their strengths. But we do work with them. A lot of them will submit direct, and they're happy to upload content directly without any input. But a lot of times they want some kind of guidance. We tend to work, yeah, we tend to work a lot with the premium photographers, yeah, because those are the ones which I think create, you can rely on to create consistent results, and who are going to take a brief and actually see it through. A lot of them have that kind of strength of vision that, you know, is something that is a hallmark of a lot of the successful photographers. They can see a brief through to the final images. So you know you're going to get what you work on, or you know you're going to conceive, what you've conceived will see the light of day.
How do you get your work to stand out? You must be getting loads of people approaching you.
Yes.
Their best work.
Yes.
How are you going to get you to notice us, other than the quality of the work, obviously?
Yeah, I think that's where, you know, the quality of the work really comes in. And I think, you know, as we talked about earlier on, it's about the idea of having a body of work and having a little bit of an idea behind that. That's a really important thing. So it's perhaps having, you know, something that really interests you rather than having a wide range of things. It's about that focus and that depth. So rather than having a wide range of things that are all kind of covered, it's about actually, I'm really into this particular thing and I'm going to get really deep into it. And that's really something that it's more fulfilling for the photographer, and it's actually something that resonates when you see something that's been put together as a result of someone who really gets into it and is really, you know, involved in what they're doing. You actually sense that in the work, and that's something that is, you know, you can't really, you can't put a price on that. Yeah, well, it depends on how the image is being used for most of this stuff, which is rights managed. So it would be dependent on the usage. So if it's going to be a billboard usage, then it could be, you know, tens of thousands of dollars, down to if it's going to be used, for example, one time on a greetings card, it could be $5. So it depends on, there's a scale of usage. That's okay. It depends on the license model, but on the rights managed content, it's 30% to the photographer, so it's 70%. And on the royalty-free model, it's 20% to the photographer, so it's 80%. So it is a big percentage.
30% to the photographer?
Yes, yeah. There are agencies that offer higher percentages, but I guess we see it as, you know, in terms of coverage, we've got a great reach. So that's the kind of argument for it.
So if you're only kind of starting photographer, you don't have a big portfolio, but
yes,
maybe 20 good photographs. You will still be interested in that work?
Yeah, I think we're interested in viewing it. I think the best thing to do is to get that onto a Flickr account, and then to go to there's an application through Flickr, and to use that, because the workflow is a lot easier to actually use through the Flickr workflow. So that's what I would say to do, is to submit work for consideration that way, and then it will get reviewed by our editors, and then you'll be contacted with an offer of, so the email would come through from Yahoo and saying our friends at Getty Images are interested in your shots, And that's how it could work. But yeah, if anyone is interested, we'd love to obviously see any of your work. But I think more than that, it's about, hopefully, what I wanted to demonstrate was that the idea of getting involved in something and following through on an idea is really important. And I think if you can get further into that and have confidence in it and really make it see the light of day, that's something that is really valuable, and for you as well as anyone else. So whether it's with whoever the content's, whether it's for art or whether it's for you, whether it's done as a project, whether it is for you want it to be represented by Getty Images, follow your ideas through to the nth degree as far as you can down that road, because that's a surefire route, and obviously then the work that you produce from that will be much, much better. Hello. I started out, I did photography at uni, and I did a year in Paris at the Sorbonne, and I then came back and was looking for work after I finished my degree. And I started working, I did a door-to-door sales of photography in the States, which was quite hardcore after a very nice kind of theoretical environment that I was in. So that was straight into the commerce. And then I came back and I started working for an image library, and then I worked for one of our clients, an agency, marketing agency, as an art buyer, which was commissioning photography and illustration. And then I became a head of art buying. So I looked after a department of retouchers, and we were commissioning photography and also buying stock imagery for different projects, different clients. So we had clients like Sony or Oxfam, WWF. And then I came back to Getty Images on the creative side, because that was quite interesting to me. And there is a freedom there, as you can see with the work that we've gone through. There's a freedom that you don't get within the agency world. And a lot of our photographers, they like the fact that they can work on a project, and that project can be totally devoid of any input from clients, and then they can see how it does. They can put it up and see how it does. And I think there's something in that process, and it's a real luxury to be able to work in that way, because of 7 years of art buying, I know that there's client input on every single thing that you do. If you're a photographer working for an agency and you're commissioned by an agency, they want to know exactly where you are. They're standing over your shoulder, looking at what you've done. Whereas I think there's a freedom to working in the way that Getty Images does, where you can actually have project work that makes money. And a lot of these people that's exactly what they're doing. So they're following what they want to do and the projects that they want to be involved in, and actually then making a revenue from those, which is a nice kind of additional thing. So does that answer your question, Vicky?
Does the name feature on anything that's useful, or is it just saying posted by Getty Images?
Sorry?
Does the photographer's name feature on what it's used for?
It should do, yeah. A lot of clients don't feature the photographer name, which is a shame, and we try and go back to them and ask them to use it. You'll often see sports photography is one where they just use, you see it in the papers a lot, but they're meant to, but sometimes they don't for whatever reason. So the photographer is meant to be credited through the work that's done, through the license that's bought. Yes, yeah. And on the site, yeah, obviously you can see who's created it. I mean, that's when you're searching for imagery, you can see who the photographer is. And so all these photographers are, you can search through their work with us as well. Does that answer your question? So
anyone from, for example, Europe, they can actually contact you as well,
yeah? Yeah, anywhere, not just Europe, yeah. Yeah, and I think Flickr is the best way of getting your work in front of an editor if you're interested in that. So.
Are there any rights issues with Flickr? Does Flickr, in their terms and conditions, claim any rights to your work when you upload?
No, I think what Flickr were looking for, because as a buyer, I would often try and use work from Flickr, and obviously art directors loved it because it had an immediacy and a different quality to it. And so I'd often get told, oh, we want to use this shot from Flickr. So you'd end up contacting a photographer, trying to get hold of them through Flickr. It often didn't work. You couldn't manage to contact them in time. Usually the briefs were very short. You know, everything's very much like, you know, want it now, want it now. So I think Flickr were losing a lot of interest from potential buyers. And so the idea of their partnership with us is that what we do is we say to the Flickr photographers, it needs to be released, model released and property released in order for us to have it. And so buyers can use the collection of Flickr content that we have and know that there aren't these issues, that everything is cleared for use, because that was a major problem that happened with Flickr. And there were lots of times where, you know, photographers were, you know, contacted. They weren't sure if it was a kosher, assignment or not. And I think what the partnership has done is to make Flickr content available in that way, but in a safe way, in a way that's understandable. So.
Any last minute questions? Otherwise you can catch on. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming in.
No, thanks for having me. Thanks for listening.
And you're going to stay, aren't you?
Yeah.
Great, okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.